Okay, so before we kick off this week's content, I just want to start off by asking if anyone had any issues uploading their homework to D2L over the course of the past couple days. Any problems? Any problems? Big problems? Show-stopping problems? Was everyone able to log into D2L and at least see the Dropbox? Okay, good. Rock and roll. That's what we want. If you can't get access to D2L, you need to let me know immediately, okay? Because I have to contact Student Services and officially get you on the list and add you into the D2L system, okay? So make sure that you get access to D2L. 100% of what we're going to be turning in as far as assignments are going to be issued, or excuse me, are going to be submitted through D2L. So it's an important thing to have kind of mastery on going forward. How went the coffee cup? Good, right? Good. Like Sean said, you probably experienced the whole spectrum of human emotions in one project. You probably were banging your head against the computer table going, why is this not working like Pat did it in class? He made it look so easy. And then when you get on your own, you start questioning like your role in life, and you start thinking that I'm never going to be a 3D modeler. These are all normal feelings, okay? Welcome to 3D. Even I have these feelings from time to time where I go, what am I doing as I bang my head against the wall, okay? It's normal to experience this. It really, really is. The one thing that you're going to experience over the next couple of weeks is a certain degree of fluency within the application. This is like day one, okay? You are learning how to walk, basically. And every time you learn how to walk, you stumble, you fall, you hit your head on things as you bump around. You're a little bit wobbly, but trust me, you will get comfortable. This will become easier. Trust me, it will become easier, okay? Every semester, this GCOM 402 runs through the exact same experience, where the first 2 or 3 weeks, it's really tough, okay? Initially, and I'll be the first one to admit this, initially the learning curve is kind of steep, okay? Yeah, it's kind of steep, okay? But don't worry, it's gonna even out after a little bit. We're always gonna have an uphill trajectory in this course. We're always gonna be challenging you to learn new things and to explore new forms and to expand your technical skill, okay? But it's gonna get easier. It's gonna get easier, okay? I threw a lot at you last week. I really did. I really did. And unfortunately, it's the only way that we can get rolling is just to get in there, get your hands dirty, and fail.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Melanie's like, oh yeah, I failed. How many times did you make your coffee cup? 4 times, yeah, that's normal. That is normal, okay? So if you made your coffee cup like 8 or 9 times, it's all part of the show, okay? It really is. I can't tell you how many times I've rebuilt a model from scratch, okay? Because you'll learn something during the production of any model, right? You'll figure out a better way to do it. You'll run into a technical problem that you didn't anticipate, and you'll have to start over. These are normal experiences for all 3D modelers, okay? So don't feel as though you're having a different experience than anyone else in this class. This is a tough, tough course, okay? I try not to sugarcoat it. This is going to be difficult for you guys, okay? But it's also going to be a tremendous amount of fun, okay? Given that you came week 3, that you endured, you survived your coffee cup, instantly shows me that you guys are really committed to learning this process. Because a lot of folks, they just give up after the first assignment. So I'm happy to see all your bright, shining faces back here again. Let's continue our journey into the wonderful world of 3D modeling by talking about what we're going to be exploring this week. This week, we're going to kick it up a notch. This week, we're going to continue to expand upon our understanding of how to build 3D models inside of Modo. If you really kind of think of the big picture ideas that we covered last week was all about cylinders, right? It's all about circles and cylinders. Well, this week we're going to change the tune a little bit, and we're going to really start focusing on squares. Okay, so we're going to do some square stuff today. You can see in the Working with Layers blog post on GCOM or on renderography.com, we're going to be exploring some important concepts. Specifically, we're going to be talking about the role of an item. Last week, we talked a lot about the 3 basic building blocks of all 3D models, the component types. Does anyone remember what those component types are? Yeah, you got it. Vertices, edges, and polygons. The basic building blocks of all 3D models, the component types. They're kind of the low man on the totem pole. We're going to move up the hierarchy and start exploring some of the more important elements within the Modo ecosystem, and they're classified as items. So we're going to spend some time talking about how to work with items, their role, their advantages, and what they provide to us inside this time or inside this environment. Okay, so we're going to look at items today. Through this process, if you go into the homework section, we'll talk about this in detail a little bit later. But through this process of working with items and learning how to work with items, you're going to be making a simple little cork board, okay? If you think about it, the majority of the objects that are going to be constructed and placed on this cork board are all squares. The board, the posters, these are all going to be generated using the cube tool, okay? In addition, you're also going to be making some thumbtacks, okay? What basic simple shape is a thumbtack? It's a cylinder. 100% of that thumbtack can be constructed using the same technique that you learned last week, starting off with a very simple circle and then beveling that circle to eventually get to that end result, okay? In addition to talking about how to work with squares and items, we're also going to be exploring the duplication tools, because if you look at this next example of a previous student project, you can see that they really, they really went crazy. They really went crazy with the detail. Look at Mega Man down over there, okay? Mega Man, and this is the person that made this, went above and beyond the Call of Duty. They went further than was even expected on this project, and Mega Man is actually constructed out of individual thumbtacks, okay, which I find really kind of cool. So there's probably about 100 little thumbtacks, purposely oriented in a very specific pattern to make it look like Mega Man, which I think is really kind of rad. I love it. Yeah.
Can we go further and like make the flyers real flyers?
Yeah. So that's gonna be next week, and I think Callan has really drawn focus to an important distinction. We were going to talk about this later when we start talking about the specifics, but this is going to be a 2-week project. Week 1, we're going to build it. We're going to build all the geometry. We're going to get everything flushed out on a geometric level, on the mesh level, okay? And then next week, we're going to take this project file and we're going to texture it. Next week's conversation is going to encapsulate this shader tree. So we're going to talk about how to add the images on the poster, how to make the cork board look like cork, how to make the frame look like wood. That's all going to happen next week. Yeah?
Correct me if I'm incorrect, but I assume the texture includes the thumbtacks and papers and whatnot.
Absolutely, absolutely. So next week's conversation is going to build off of what we accomplished this week. So this is a really important week to do your homework. You can't skip this week because we're going to be revisiting this project next week, okay? If you don't do your homework this week, you're going to have twice as much work to do next week, okay? More on that as we get into it. All right. So that's what we're going to be talking about in the lab portion of today. In the lecture portion of today. We have a fun little lab assignment, and it really is going to be a small little lab assignment that's going to allow you guys to understand a new facet of the Bevel tool. You're going to find that the Bevel tool has a lot of applications inside of our 3D workflow. Last week we were using the Bevel tool to construct probably 95% of the coffee cup, right? Well, this week we're going to look at a new option in the Bevel tool that allows us to create some really unique shapes quickly. Because I'm sure, especially when you're working on the lid for your coffee cup, it probably started to get a little bit frustrating using the Bevel tool, having to go like up, out, in, out, 9,000 times to get a really unique profile for the edge of the lid, right? Well, we're going to be exploring a new set of options for the Bevel tool that will expedite that process. Eli, I think you had a question? Yeah, okay. So we're going to through our conversation, we're going to build a little candlestick, okay? And you're going to find that it's really, really fast and really, really easy. And it's just going to be a quick little lab assignment that's going to get our hands dirty with this important tool. We'll probably have time in class to knock this one out or to at least get started on it. So more on that later. All right. Then last but certainly not least, I just want to draw focus to a couple resources that I've provided to you guys in the Resources tab. This week I've drawn focus to 4 very important videos that are going to completely encapsulate everything that we talk about today. So if you need an additional refresher, those 4 videos are going to directly address the content of today's class. So you'll have the live stream, you'll have those 4 videos there, you'll have the resources in the lab to help you out. If you have questions, you're not looking very, very hard for the answers, okay? There's a lot of support out there to help you work through this process, okay? Questions? We good? Everyone good? Everyone kind of understand the scope of what we're talking about today? Let's hit it, rock and roll, on to Moto. Okay, so last week we talked a lot about how to build a very basic shape. What shape were we focusing on last week? Cylinder, right. Okay, pop quiz. How do you make a perfect circle? What tool do we got to activate first? Cylinder, there it is. Cylinder. So remember, keep in mind. Thomas, question? Your screen view is all out of whack. Ah, yes. Or yeah, see, you're in the UV tab. Go over to the model tab, and then you'll have the environment that we're used to. Okay, no problem. Keep in mind, the upper left-hand corner of the basic tool tab is really important for us. What do we find in this section of the interface? What do we do with all of these guys? We make stuff. Yeah, we make shapes, okay? These are the basic construction tools inside of Modo that allow us to very quickly flush out some very simple shapes, including cubes and cylinders, spheres, donuts and cones. They have a lot of roles, okay? So get used to coming back to this part of the interface. It's one of those areas that you're going to use a lot. Now, directly below this part of the interface, you can see that we have some additional critically important tools. Now, what do these guys do? Yeah, James, say that again. I love it. So these are transform tools, right? They're going to help us manipulate these shapes by allowing us to change their location, their rotation, and their size, okay? So help me out. So we're talking move, rotation, and scale, right? Does anyone remember the keyboard shortcut for the move tool? W. So that's the move tool, right? Keyboard shortcut W. What's the keyboard shortcut for the rotate tool? R. Whoops, excuse me. I wish it was R. One would think that it's R, rotate R, right? But it's not. What is it? E. Okay? And then last but not least, we have the scale tool, which is R. Okay? Now, those are strategically positioned on your keyboard. There's a reason they're together, W, E, and R. It's not happenstance. If you think about it, move, one would believe that the keyboard shortcut for move would be the M key, right? Move, M. No, it's W, E, R, okay? They put them together because you're going to be using those tools a lot. So remember those three keyboard shortcuts. These are things you're going to be doing every other operation seemingly inside of our three-dimensional package. We're going to use, absolutely. We're going to use these a lot. Okay. Okay, so let me get rid of all this stuff, and I'm going to make a perfect circle. Now, I want you guys to walk me through the steps of making a perfect circle. I've already activated the cylinder tool, so what's the next step? Left click. You just got it. Single left click, right? Where am I going to left click? Empty space in the center window, right? Does anyone remember what this window is called? Yeah, OpenGL viewport. Or if you just want to kind of condense that down into something that's a little bit more manageable, it's your viewport. Okay? It's your viewport. So single left click in your viewport, and that's going to turn on, or excuse me, that's going to apply the tool. Boop, there it is. I know the tool has now been applied because I get some tool handles, right? Rock and roll. I love it. Now what's the next step? Careful, 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 okay? Because this is where the train derails. We have to physically move our cursor away from the tool handle, right? That is important. If you don't have your cursor away from your tool handles, you're going to make a cylinder. We don't want that. We want a circle, a two-dimensional circle. So check it out. I'm putting my cursor over here, okay, in the viewport. Whatever you do, don't have your cursor completely leave the work environment. If your cursor's over in the item list or on this part of the interface, it's not going to work. Okay, it's just not going to work. So make sure your cursor is still in the OpenGL viewport for this tool to work correctly. Okay, so I've single left clicked. I've moved my cursor away from the tool handle. Now what do I do? What's the third step? Yeah, now we hold down the control key. Okay. After I depress the control key, what am I going to do? Left click and drag. You got it. Now the reason I had my little pen here robbed me. Let me back up for a second. Sometimes when you use the pen tool, you register a double click. So move your tool away from the handles, hold on the control key, and I guess it's just going to be sensitive today. There we go. Hold on the control key, left click and drag. That's where I'm talking about. Okay. My little pen here gets a little sensitive sometimes, and sometimes when I think I'm single clicking, I'm actually double clicking. Okay. And this is what we want. Now, some of you guys came into my office hours last week and were a little confused as to the round nature of my cylinder. Because if you watched me last week, my little circle here was like almost perfectly circular. Okay? If you look at what I got on the screen here, it doesn't look so hot, right? It's pretty faceted, as we say. It's pretty faceted. If you look carefully, you can see that we have a whole bunch of edges going around the circumference of my circle. While the tool is still live, we have some options that will allow us to increase or decrease the number of sides that are going to be constructed on our circle. Now, I got to mention, and kind of this is an important note, okay? You can do this while the tool is still live, so while the tool is still on. What kind of visually tells us that the tool is still live and on? Yeah, orange, yep, the orange background color on the tool itself. What else tells me that the tool is still on? Yeah, the actual tool handles, right? This is what you're talking about. The tool handles on the viewport, in the viewport itself. Those tell us that the tool is still on, okay? There's one other thing. Aaron's pointing to it. What is it, Aaron? The thing on the left. Yeah, your tool options. I'm not going to torture you anymore. Yeah, it's the tool options over here. Those are the three things that visually reinforce that a tool is active. So while this tool is active, we get to change some of the parameters that was going to control and influence how this shape looks, okay? And where we're going specifically is over here. Tool options, okay? Sides, yeah. That value right there is going to determine the resolution of your cylinder. If I was to increase this, it's going to look more circular. And if I was to dump this down to like 3, what would I have if I had a 3-sided cylinder? A triangle. Let's just do it real fast. I'm going to change that value to 3, and then once I hit return, you can see that my cylinder changes. This only happens after you hit return on your keyboard, or the enter key, okay? The return key is going to confirm that change and change your shape. So clearly I don't want a triangle. That'd be a really funky coffee cup. So I'm going to put this up to like 20 and watch what happens. Boom. Now it's more circular, okay? Don't go crazy with this value, okay? Because if you start going above like 24, you're now entering into a very, very dangerous part of the 3D modeling environment, okay, or the 3D modeling workflow. Did it crash? I've never actually entered 3,000 sides on a circle. I'm not going to, because I think that would just be kind of, that'd be a waste of our time. So I'm not going to do that. But here's my kind of mantra, and you're going to hear me say this a lot over the next couple of weeks. More polygons, more problems, okay? The more polygons that you have on your geometry, on your mesh, is going to force you down some technically challenging roads, okay? At times, we want to have a lot of geometry because we can do some pretty amazing things with them. We can make some very complex shapes. But initially, during the early stages of fleshing out any model, more polygons, more problems, okay? We want to keep it simple. We want to keep it as few polygons as we can, so that way the tools work easier, our brain can consume the shape, and there's just less work for us to do, okay? If you made a coffee cup that was like an octagon, don't worry about it. We're going to talk about how we can resolve those shapes, especially cylinders, here shortly, all right? All right, I think I'll leave. Oh, here's one other little tip. And this is just kind of a professional tip that I've learned. Even numbers on your sides, okay? Only even numbers, okay? If you start making cylinders that have like 7 sides or 9 sides, that's going to be problematic down the line, okay? When we start having to slice and chop up our model into hopefully a shape that is constructed entirely of quad polygons. Even number only, even number. For me personally, whenever I'm working with cylinders, I'm anywhere between the 8 and 16 range. I very rarely go up to 20, okay? 8 and 16 is usually where I hang out, and I only do the even increments in there. I think my favorites, to be honest with you, are 8 and 12. Those are the ones that I hang out probably the most, okay? You'll see why here in a couple weeks. Even number sides only. All right, so I'm done with this. I've made my cylinder, okay? How do I turn the tool off? Spacebar, right? Spacebar. What does the spacebar do? I love it. It drops the tool. If a tool is still active, and Eli, you're also right. If a tool is on, it turns off the tool, okay? I got a tool on. We know visually what tells me that tool is on. So if I just simply tap the space bar, the tool is off. All three of those visual indicators that told me a tool was active are now gone, and the space bar changes its role. So Eli, what would happen if I hit the space bar now? Yeah, you got it. It's going to cycle through all the selection sets that are available to us. So I want you to pay really close attention to the top of the screen, and I'll zoom in so you guys can see what's happening. All right. There we go. All right. So there are the three selection sets of all the component types. We talked about their role, their function last week. Tapping the space bar is going to allow us to cycle through those selection sets. So it's a very fast, quick, easy way, okay, to work inside of Modo. We don't necessarily have to take our mouse cursor away from where away from where we're modeling and go up to the top of the screen and hit a button. Those keyboard shortcuts keep the workflow going. Okay. All right. Okay, so there's my little cylinder. Awesome. Or my little circle. Now I want this to be a coffee cup that is coming out of the ground, right? So if this is going to be a vertical cup, what do I have to do to my cylinder here? I got to flip it. I got to rotate it. Which direction? I don't know. I don't. And I think this is the problem that some people get hung up on when they're working with the rotation tool. They focus so much on the axes that they stop looking at their scene, okay? Whenever I'm trying to figure out any sort of complex modeling operation in any app, I think about the outcome first, okay? Don't think about the tool. Don't think about how you're going to do it or what axes you need to rotate it at what value. That's not important at the moment. We just got to think about what we're trying to accomplish. So what are we trying to accomplish? Coffee cup? Okay. Let's get localized to this rotation step. What are we just trying to do? We just need to rotate it, right? So here's my cylinder, right? What direction do I got to rotate it? What do I got to do to it? Boom, I got to do that, okay? Yeah. So now that we have kind of a better understanding of what the goal is, we can use the information that the computer is giving us to make the operation itself. So we need to go flip like that, okay? The action handles on the rotation tool kind of give you a nice visual reminder as to which direction you need to rotate it, okay? So let me go into my polygon selection set, and I'm going to select my polygon by single left clicking on it, and then simply activating the rotation tool or hitting the E key will give us our tool handles. Now that we know exactly what orientation this polygon needs to be in the scene, we have a really good understanding of which handle we probably should go to use, right? Which color handle should I use to rotate my polygon as I did with the clipboard a moment ago?
Red.
The red one, right? The orientation of those circles kind of represents the path, if you will, that this polygon is going to rotate along, okay? So let's do it real fast. I'm just going to flip this over like that. Ha-ha. Okay, now I want to do this with a certain degree of accuracy. How do I do it? With a number. Yeah, we like numerics, okay? I'm all about numbers. And Aaron had it right. Remember your tool options, okay? They're going to allow you to numerically rotate this object along at a very specific value. All right. I want to put negative 90 in here. Boom. So that my polygon is facing up. While we're talking about the idea of our polygon facing up, let's revisit how the compass works in our OpenGL viewport. Where's the compass? Bottom left. What's it look like? Square-ish. Yeah, kind of a square. Okay. And what we're talking about specifically is this guy down over here, right? That's the compass. The compass gives us an idea as to the orientation of all three of our axes, right? That's really all it's doing down here. It's just gently reminding us which way is up, which way is forward, and which way is left. Okay? Now, oops. Let me get that out of the way. I apologize. Okay, so from what you can see on my compass, which way is up? Okay? The y-axis represents the vertical axes in our scene. But how do you know which way is up? Liam?
Y.
The y-axis is up. Okay? Which icon on their compass represents the y-axis? So easy, it's hard. It's the one that says y, right? The green line that says y at the end. That represents the y-axis. Now, the location of the letter. Okay, now this is the important bit. Where that letter is facing represents the positive values of that axis, right? We know from our conversation last week that positive y is up, right? So if you were to point towards the sky, which direction would it be? In this case, up, right? These are like kind of gigantic arrows. They're reminding us to the orientation of all three of those guys, okay? So in our case, y is going that way. That is up. What tells us where in our scene is the front or forwards? The z-axis, absolutely. The z-axis is going to define forwards and backwards, or the front of our scene and the back of our scene. Which direction along the z-axis is the front? Positive. Positive z is always the front. Our little compass down here gently reminds us to the orientation of that axis, okay? It's pointing out that way. And of course, we also have the x as well, all right? You want to make sure you're looking at two of these at any given time. I always keep my eyeball on the orientation of the y-axis because I want my coffee cup to be orientated the correct way, right? I want the lid of my coffee cup to be on the top, okay, on the positive side of the y value. And then, like for example, this week's homework assignment, you're going to be making a cork board, right? You want your cork board facing the front of your scene, right? So which direction should your cork board be facing? Yeah, along the positive z. So we kind of need to keep an eye on which direction all of our axes are facing to ensure that we're modeling these things correct. All right? So with that said, let's zoom out and talk about our little guy here real fast. Okay. So now I can see that the direction of this polygon is facing up. I'm free to start the bevel tool, right? What keyboard shortcut is the bevel tool? The B. B as in boy, B as in bevel. How does the tool work? What's the first thing we got to do? Select it. Who said that? Mr. Pearson, you get a gold star for the day. Yes. Everything begins with a selection. If we want to edit a polygon, we have to select that polygon. Okay? It's an important habit to build. We have to have that muscle memory. Okay? Because if you don't get into the habit of selecting things, it's going to come back to haunt you. The entire Modo system works on this selection and property, so it's an important one. Okay? So I got my polygon selected. Now what do I do? Hit the bevel tool, right? Where do you find the bevel tool?
B or the side tab.
You got it. So you hit the keyboard shortcut B, and then specifically, you can find the bevel tool in the Basics tab, and it's right there. Woo, bevel, okay? You're going to find the bevel tool in a couple other places within your toolbar. So don't be surprised if you were to go into like the Polygon tab and find the bevel tool. It's the same tool, okay? It's the same tool. It really is. The Basic Tool tab is kind of like the All-Stars. It's the hits, the greatest hits of all the Modo tools. So you're going to find some of these tools in other parts of the interface. All right, so let's turn on the tool and start working with it. Boom, bevel tool has been activated. What do I got to do now?
Click on the shape.
Yeah, absolutely. We got to click, right? And this is where people often forget, or what people often forget to do, is they forget to click, okay? With the bevel tool, you have done nothing until you've applied the tool to your scene by clicking in your scene. Okay, so we got to click on it. And then once we click on my polygon, bam, there's the tool handles. I'm ready to start working with this shape. Now, we're not going to revisit the entirety of our homework assignment, but I do want to ask an important question. What are the roles of both of those tool handles? We'll start off with the blue one. Liam, what's the blue one do?
All right, the blue one lengthens it or raises it.
I love it. I love it.
In other words, makes it longer.
Makes it taller and longer. I love it. Great job. Bam. Okay. Awesome. What's the red one going to do? Yeah. It's Roberto, right?
Yes.
Learning names. Yeah.
Expands it, makes it wider.
Wider. Makes it bigger. Absolutely. So in my mind, we're scaling it. Okay. Say again? Inwards. Yeah, we can make it bigger or smaller. We get both of those options. Okay. So the bevel tool quickly becomes a powerful tool inside of our modeling pipeline because we can create some custom shapes quickly. Now, how do I repeat the tool? What if I wanted to continue to bevel? What if I wanted to make this kind of like into a bolt? Okay? Huh? Space E. B. You could. And what Mr. Pryor is suggesting that we do is drop the tool and then reapply it again, right? There's a faster way of doing that. Eli? Shift click. Okay? Now, let's talk about where inside the universe, or scene, excuse me, we're going to shift click. Where are you going to click?
Outside of it.
Outside of it, absolutely. So like the empty part of the viewport, okay? Don't shift click on the handle. So if your cursor is hanging out on the blue arrow or on the red guy over here, you have to physically move your cursor away from the tool handles, and then you can shift click. If you don't, dangerous things are going to happen, okay? Actually, it's just not going to work, okay? If you're, you don't have to be like really far away from the tool handle. You don't have to be like up here in the corner or anything. You can be relatively close. Just make sure you don't shift click on the blue handle, okay? Now that I've done that, I can continue beveling this guy, okay? I can do a little bit more of an inset. We'll do shift click again, shift, left click, and now I can drag that shape down or up and I'm on my way, okay? You're going to find the bevel tool infinitely useful inside of Modo. I use the bevel tool frequently, and you're going to see me using it often, okay? A lot, actually. Here's a little foreshadowing for our homework. The cork board, entirely made with the bevel tool once again, okay? Your thumbtack, entirely made with the bevel tool, okay? So we're kind of reinforcing this tool in our homework again this week. All right, so I'm done with the tool, so what do I got to do with it? Yeah, I heard it. Spacebar to drop the tool, and we turn it off. Mission accomplished, okay? This is where we kind of ended our conversation last week. In addition, we also, did we talk about materials? No, let's talk just very quickly about materials. Some of you had a question, and I apologize for not answering these questions during class last week. We just simply ran out of time. If I want to change the color of my little shape here, we have to apply what's called a material. Now, we're going to have an entire conversation about materials, and that's going to happen next week. I mean, the entire day is going to be nothing but material and rendering, okay? So we're going to come back and revisit some more of these ideas later. But here's the basic idea. If I wanted to change like the base of my little shape here to have a different color, well, let's say I wanted it to be red, what's the first thing in your mind that we have to do?
Shade the area you want it to be colored.
Well, that's where we're going to go, right? That's the outcome. What's the first thing we got to do, though?
We got highlights.
Yeah, I heard it. We got to highlight. We got to select it, right? We got to select those polygons. When I said everything begins with the selection earlier, I was not joking. Everything begins with a selection, okay? So I'm in my polygonal selection set. So if I was to go around and select these polygons down here, there we go. There it is. Those are lovely. How do I want to add this top row into the mix as well. How do I add polygons to my selection? Shift and click. And you can left click and drag, or you can just single left click, but the shift key is going to allow you to add. Oops, I got a little sloppy, and I accidentally selected two polygons that I don't want. How do I subtract from my selection? Control, it's control, not shift, it's control. Control is going to allow you to subtract. So I'm holding down the control key now, and now I can click on those polygons and remove them from my selection. Okay. So shift is add, Control is subtract, just like Photoshop. Okay? All right, so now that I got my polygonal selection, I can apply a very, very simple material. The keyboard shortcut for this is M. M as in material. And once you hit the M key, check it out, you're going to get this little popover. And let's talk about this for a second. This little popover is important, okay? Because what we're doing is that we're assigning the polygons that we have selected in the background a unique color. So the first thing we have to do is name that color, okay? Don't leave it on default. See how it says default in the first line there? Don't have it say default, okay? Give it a name. I want my polygons to be red, so what's a good name for this material?
Base.
Or I was going to go red, but that's base will work too. Yeah. I like the way you think though, because I think in actuality I would probably name it base. But for today, we'll keep it simple and we'll just name this material red. Okay? You got to give it a name. And then right below that, we have another field here. And if you just click on it, it'll bring open your OS color picker. I like my crayons, okay? I won't lie. When I'm working on professional projects, sometimes I've worked on some very large projects at some very big design firms, and I'm almost always rocking my crayons, okay? It just makes me feel like I'm in kindergarten, and I think any moment that we feel like we're in kindergarten is a good day, okay? This is totally a tangent, and I apologize. This is derailing us. You guys know about cup holders, the cup holder effect on design, right? Cars, this stems from car design. If you look at a lot of cars, there's cup holders everywhere. Do you really need like 16 cup holders on the inside of a car? No, you don't need 16 cup holders on the inside of your car, but it's nice to have them, right? Just in case, okay? Just in case you're drinking a lot of soda, of course, nothing else, okay? And maybe you have a car full of people. Cup holders is kind of, it makes you feel like you're getting something more than you paid for, right? It's the little things. It's the cup holder effects that just makes you feel warm and fuzzy about your purchase. Because you just spent $30,000 on a hunk of metal, and the one thing that everyone talks about is how comfortable the seats are and how many cup holders are on the inside of the car. I find that entertaining from a cultural perspective. This is a cup holder thing. So that the kind of cup holder effect has extended into other areas in our world. And the Macintosh OS is full, it is chocked full of cup holder-like features that we really don't need, okay? But it makes it kind of cool, makes it kind of warm and fuzzy, gives you that little warm and fuzzy feeling. This crayon box is one of those cup holders, okay? When you first install the Macintosh operating system, on day one of the installation, if you were to open up your color picker, all your crayons would have a perfect point to them, as if the crayon box was brand new. And then on day two, the tips round out, as if you had been using them for a couple days. It's a cup holder thing, but I just love it. I think it's awesome. So it's the little things, it's the little cup holder effects that makes you go, that's kind of cool, I wish, that'd be rad. There'd be like one that was like half melted. There'd be another one that has like teeth mark in it from where your little brother was like gnawing on your crayon. Yeah. You know what I'm talking about. Okay, so I want to pick a color. I like my crayons, but if you like standard color wheels, you get all of that stuff too. But I like to keep my life simple, and I'm going to choose red. Excuse me, maraschino. Okay, and then we'll just hit OK. Don't worry about the rest of the stuff. We're going to talk about that next week. Okay. But the moment you hit OK, you can see that your polygons now change from their default white color to red. Okay? Let's do it again. Do it one more time so at the very least we have some mastery over this technique. Okay? I want this part to be blue, so if I just select all those polygons, holding down the Shift key now, I can apply them, or I can apply a blue material to them. What's the keyboard shortcut for applying a material? The M key. Okay, don't forget the M key. The M key, M equals material. Okay. The role of a material and its properties are going to be explored next week. So we'll hit the M key. What are we going to do? Are we going to leave it, have it stay named red? No, we've got to change its name to blue. And then I'm going to make the color green. No, that would just throw me for a loop. Yeah. And then hit OK, and now my polygons are blue. This is the basic underpinning of a phenomenal rendering system that's ultimately going to give us some photorealistic results. So we're going to expand on this a lot, but this is the foundation of what we're going to be exploring next week. So if you want to apply simple colors to your corkboard this week, or if you haven't finished your coffee cup and you want to maybe have the lid be black or the cardboard sleeve be kind of a cardboardy brown, that's the way to do it. Okay? Questions? That, in a nutshell, was everything that we talked about last week. Okay? All right. All right. So let's zoom out here. Okay. All right. Last week, we spent a tremendous amount of time talking about the role and the importance of our basic components, right? So let's go back to the beginning of the class. What are the three basic components of all 3D models? Vertices, edges, and polygons, right? Vertices, edges, and polygons. However, if you really start to think about it, vertices, edges, and polygons are really a child of a much important and a much larger architecture. Okay, let me show you what I'm talking about. So we have, of course, we have vertices, edges, and polygons. Okay, these are the component types. Believe it or not, those all feed into a much larger system called an item. So if you think about it, here we go. I want to get creative here. Okay, this is an art school, so pretend that's a straight line. Okay, these are all children of this guy up here. Okay, so they feed into an item. An item, in my mind, is kind of like a really fancy folder. Pretend, Mr. Button, pretend, and it's a straight line. I can see the wheels turning in your head. It's a P. It's a P for polygons. Pretend. Hang in there with me. Pretend. Okay. I'm joking. I'm just giving you a hard time. So an item, in my mind, is kind of like a really fancy folder, right? So think about all the files and the folders that you have on your Macs or your home PCs. What's inside of a folder?
Pictures.
Pictures, a file, music, okay? Movies, legal movies, of course. You would never steal things from the web.
No.
Never would do that, right? Never would do that. So there, these items are really going to contain, a number of different things, okay? They're the parent, right? Wherever we move a folder on our PC, the contents of that folder also come along for the ride, right? So if we wanted to change its location, all those files in that folder would also change its location. Well, here in Modo, we kind of have something that's similar to that, okay? We have fancy folders that are called items. And the role of the item is many. There are many different types of items, and each one of them has a very specific role. But think of it like a parent, okay? Its child, the vertices, edges, and polygons, are going to go wherever the item goes, okay? To work with our items, we have to go to a very important part of the Modo interface. And we talked a little bit about this last week while we were going through the interface tour, but let's really spend some time and look at its component pieces, okay? This is the item list on the right-hand portion of your screen. You're going to be using the item list a lot. I think if there was one thing that we probably could equate the item list to, would be like the layers panel in Photoshop. I remember last week that a number of you guys have some experience in Photoshop. This is very similar to that layers panel, okay? However, the only thing that we really don't get inside of Modo is the hierarchy of transparency in your layers palette, right? Because in Photoshop, if a layer's on top, it's going to block out everything that's below, right? We don't get that. We don't get that here. But our item list is going to tell us all of the separate different types of items that are currently in our scene. So it's a nice overview of all the stuff, if you will, that's in our scene, okay? Whenever we start any scene, yes, sir?
Is there any way to make a new layer, much like Photoshop?
Absolutely, and we're going to get to that. Great question. Absolutely. We want to extend our item list to include a number of different things. But whenever you start a new scene, on default, you can get those three items off the top, okay? We have a mesh item, a camera, and a directional light. These are all classified as items. They're all fancy folders that have some very specific parameters associated with them. I want to start off by talking about how we get to work with our items in the item list, because there's some global controls here that everyone needs to be made aware of. Right now, one of my items is selected. Which one is it? Mesh. How do you know that? It's highlighted. It's highlighted. So pay attention to whatever mesh item has that dark background. Okay? Dark background, an orange text says I'm highlighted. I'm selected. Okay? Now Modo has this really cool architecture that allows other mesh items, the unselected mesh items, to be drawn differently. You'll see that here in a minute. Okay? But the important note on that idea is that whatever mesh item is selected, Modo considers that the active mesh item, okay, or the active item. Kind of makes sense. Okay? Whatever's selected is the active one. Anything that's unselected is going to be a background object. More on that later. All right? Can I move my items around? What if I want my directional light to be at the top of my list? Can I move them? Yeah, absolutely. For sure. We absolutely can move them around. It's just like Photoshop. Simply left-clicking and dragging on any one of these items in our list allows us to move their position within the list. Okay? So, for example, I know some people like to have all their cameras at the top of the scene. So if I single left-click on it and then left-click and drag, check it out. We get kind of this cool little orange line. Very similar to how we work over in Photoshop, right? Letting go, we'll just reorder the list. Okay? So if you like to have all your mesh items at the top or your lights at the bottom, this is a handy way for us to quickly reorder our list. However, buyer beware, there is a pitfall in here that people sometimes stumble upon. As you're dragging things around within the item list, be careful where your mouse cursor is placed. If I grab my camera again, and I happen to have my mouse cursor on top of another item, look where that arrow goes. Yeah, it's going on to the word mesh, and if I was to let go, what happened? Did I delete it? Yeah, we kind of grouped it together. This is called parenting inside the 3D world. And the mesh item isn't gone, my camera isn't gone, but it's now a child of that mesh object. Clicking on that black arrow there will expand that small little miniature hierarchy within our scene, and we can see there's my camera. Okay? So be very, very careful. Don't. How do you get it out? That's a great question. How do we, maybe we accidentally did that and we need to get it out of our hierarchy. Did anyone stumble upon the solution to this? Yeah, the same way you got it in, we can get it out. So just drag it out of that hierarchy. So I'm going to grab my camera, and here's what I do. Whenever I'm moving things around my item list, I try to get my cursor over here. See where my cursor is? It's kind of on the left-hand portion of this hierarchy here, this list. That way, I know that I'm not going to interactively parent that item to another guy in the scene. So we get them into a hierarchy the same way, or excuse me, we get them out of a hierarchy the same way as we get them in, by dragging and dropping. Okay. At times, working inside the item list can be a little bit daunting. Okay? When here in maybe 4 or 5 weeks, you're going to be working within scenes that have a lot of items. Let me show you an example of one of the scenes. A scene that has a bunch of items in this. I'm not sure if I showed this project to this class or if it was my Davis section, so I apologize if I'm repeating myself. But let me open up my Jeep. This is a project that I made last summer. It's a 1942 Jeep Willys, so it's the kind of the classic World War II Army Jeep, right? And I spent a lot of time working on it. There's a tremendous amount of content within inside this project file. It's a pretty dense model, as it will pop up here momentarily. If you start to explore the contents of the item list, you can already kind of get a good idea of what we're rolling with over here. I have a lot of different layers inside this item. Oh, it's still opening. You know, I ran into this a while ago, and I should know better while trying to do this while I'm streaming. Opening up project files that tax my little laptop here can cause some pretty massive problems in the live stream. So if you're watching this out there in YouTube land, I apologize. Okay, so here's my Jeep. It's a pretty cool looking Jeep, right? But to get to this result, I'm not placing all of these objects on one item in my list. I want to use the power of this layering system to separate all these parts and pieces out. Okay? What if I want the wheels of my Jeep to turn independently from all the other wheels? They got to be on their own item. What if I want the machine gun on the back of my Jeep to rotate? Well, it's got to be on its own item. So the item list is a way for us to organize our scene, but also organize our scene into elements that are going to move independently from the rest of the model. Okay. It also allows us to organize the content, so we can very quickly put certain pieces that are similar in nature in their own respective items. You can see that half of my Jeep is suspiciously pink. We'll talk about what that is in a moment, but it's a special type of item that allows me to work a little bit more efficiently in the scene. You'll see that here in action in a second. Okay. Large scenes with hundreds of items in there can be a little bit of a pain in the rear end to work with. Check it out. This is something that's new in Moto 701, and frankly, I'm very, very excited about this addition to our tool set. Because it allows us to continue to organize our scene in a system that makes sense for my brain. Okay? Because we have 26 people in this classroom. Okay? We have 26 different ways of interpreting lists. Okay? And I'll be the first one to mention, I am horrible. I mean, I am really bad at consuming large, endless lists. My brain just does not work that way. You give me a long list, I'm not going to be able to find something within that list quickly, okay? I have to read like every single element inside that list, okay? It's a problem for my brain. My brain doesn't think in lists, okay? My brain loves color coding though, okay? I'm all about color coding. You know, like I said, anything that I can, like any moment where I can return to my kindergarten-like ways, I'm going to, okay? I love color coding things. So in new in 701, right-clicking on any one of your items is going to yield a really cool contextual menu. Okay, so here's the right-click menu. We'll go through some of these here in a minute, but check it out. They have this editor color now, and we can highlight and label each item and give it its own kind of cool color, which is neat. Okay, so like green, you can see that row is now green. It's a helpful way of consuming and working with very complex scenes. Okay, it's nice. It's really nice, actually. I like that it's there. Okay, it's the little things, cup holders. Okay, you can also remove it. So if you, if you right-click on it, editor color, go back to none, we're on our way. So that's kind of a cool thing that we get. Yeah. Does my Jeep have any cup holders? Excellent question. I would believe not. It should. Let's go on to the inside of my Jeep here. No, I don't think it has any cup holders. Yeah, no cup holders, unfortunately. It's got just about everything else, but no cup holders. Whoa. It's got a really awesome weapon on the back. It's the business end of a pretty serious 50 cal. Whenever I do, this is a tangent, I apologize. I'm not saying this because I'm trying to show off or anything, but every once in a while, whenever I do personal projects, I always use it as an opportunity to explore an idea, to explore a workflow, and to, frankly, just to get better at my skill of making 3D models. And when I was working on my 50 cal here, I was presented with a couple opportunities to do something that I would never recommend that any one of you guys do. Okay, I wouldn't do this if I was working at Pixar or ILM. I would not do this. Okay, this is bad form. It causes a lot of problems. But kind of from an intellectual side of things, exploring what you can do in 3D models, it's pretty cool. Okay, let me show you what I'm talking about. This is really kind of silly. Hopefully, there it is. There's my 50 cal. Looks pretty cool. The textures, I hand painted the textures. Looks pretty rad. Looks pretty neat. I'm digging it. Okay. However, if you look at the mesh, okay, and it's a pretty detailed mesh, especially in here, inside the chamber of the weapon itself. Okay. Yeah, it's all one piece. It's all one contiguous polygon. Don't do this. Okay. Don't do this. This was something that I did just to see if I could do it, and I could do it, but I wouldn't recommend doing it. There's no what? Front sight? Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's some things on there that's not there. Absolutely. In my mind, well, there's a rear sight, so I get credit for that one. Yeah, I gotta agree with Mr. Pearson. There's the back sight. There's the rear sight. Okay. Yeah, I don't think Yeah, I don't think anyone's going to be doing anything that's incredibly accurate with a 50 cal. Yeah, yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, with the sniper rifles are nuts. Anyways, okay, so working within larger scenes kind of requires us to have mastery of working within the item list. Because as you can see in my item list here, it's going to get full of a lot of different types of things. Okay, now we're not limited to just having items that are containers and folders for geometry, for vertices, edges, and polygons. If you keep cruising down my list here, you can also see that we can get little folders too and other types of items. Okay. There's a huge spectrum of items and objects that we can create and place within our three-dimensional scene. The item list is going to allow us to manage that. I'm going to close my little Jeep here. Say goodbye to my Jeep. Goodbye, Jeep. Here we go. Go back to my little widget. Okay, check it out. So Liam asked earlier, can we add layers? Can we add items? Yeah, absolutely. To add an item into your scene, go to the top right-hand corner of the item list, and there's a gigantic button that says Add Item. Now, luckily for us, the guys down at Luxology are working on our behalf, and they've crafted an item list that categorizes all the different items into pretty easily graspable category names. So if I wanted to add an item, click on the button, and then here's the list. Okay. Now, I'm sure some of you are probably thinking, Pat, you just said it was easily consumable and easily graspable. Yes, this is probably the best it's ever going to be, okay, as far as the category names. In earlier versions of Modo, they didn't have these lovely subcategories. They didn't have a category that said constraints or fall-offs or forces. It was like just like this, it was all in one list. Oh. It was horrible. It's horrible working inside of that one, because there's like 100 separate things in this list, and you had to go find the one that you needed and then click on it, right? So at least now it's categorized into a whole suite of subcategories, which is nice. So there's a lot of different types of things that we can add into our scene. These are all categories of items that we get to add. Some of them we'll use quite frequently. Some of them, I have no idea what they do. There's some things in here that I've never even played around with. Modo is a very, very deep application, like fractal gasket. No idea what that does. I don't know. I mean, it's just, I've never seen that before, so it might have just shown up in 701, okay? But for us, we're going to be hanging out at the top of this list. And the guys down at Luxology have done a really great job of bubbling to the surface, if you will, the 3 items that you're going to be adding a lot and that you're going to be working with a lot, okay? Most importantly is the mesh item, okay? The mesh item inside of Modo is the only item type that allows us to have vertices, edges, and polygons in it, okay? So in many ways, our mesh items are our models, okay? So if we wanted to add a new mesh item into the scene, just select it from the list. We're on our way. There we go. Just Yahtzee, and there we go. Now, I'm going to select my camera at the bottom of my list just for a moment, just to allow you guys to look at the 2 mesh items at the top of the screen. Now, there is one UI element that is consistent across all mesh items. What is it? What's the common denominator? What do both of those mesh items have on an interface kind of level? Yeah, that blue cube, right? Start programming your brain to look for those blue cubes. Blue cubes are the representation of mesh items. It's the only place within our system where we're going to have vertices, edges, and polygons, okay? A little bit later on today, you're going to see a pink cube. And towards the end of the semester, I'm going to show you a purple cube, okay? So that cube icon is going to change its color depending on how we're using that inside of our scene. Every time you add an item, you get the ability to control its name. We have 2 items there that are named identically. They're both called mesh. Whenever you see, or whenever Modo sees an identically labeled item, it's going to put a little number 2 next to it. So if I was to add a 3rd mesh item into the mix here, it would say mesh parentheses 3. Okay? So that it automatically did that for us. But maybe I want to name all of my stuff. Maybe I really want to go in and start having fun with this. Okay? I'm the type of person you probably saw from my Jeep that likes to name things. I know from my experience that when working in very large scenes, you have to name things. Otherwise, you're just going to be confused, right? So how do I rename my mesh item? Yeah, absolutely. If you were to right-click on the mesh item, you're going to find this really cool contextual menu popping up. And the first one in that list, boom, rename. Name your mesh items. Get used to going in and naming your mesh items. It'll help your brain stay organized and allow you to very quickly consume the contents of your scene. So if I just rename it, okay, now what it's doing is brought open here we go. It's in the center. Sorry. So let's just call it, what are we going to call this? We're going to call this, I don't know, widget. I don't know what that is. So now it's a widget, okay? And you can see that the name changes in the item list. Right, right. There are some other ways of interactively changing the name of your items, okay? I'm a Mac guy. I'm a dyed-in-the-wool Mac guy, and one of the things that we've been able to do on the Macintosh operating system is change the names of any file and folder quickly by employing what I call the click, pause, click technique, okay? So I want to click on my mesh item. I want to pause for a second, and then the second time I click on it, it's going to enable me to change the name of this mesh item. So click. So I'll change mesh number 2. So I'll click, pause, click, and you can see that I'm now able to rename this object interactively. Okay. So we'll call this, oh, I don't know. Call it sphere. There we go. So now I got widget and sphere. All right. So get used to renaming things. It's not the only place that you can rename your mesh item within the scene. If you have any mesh item selected, the Properties tab underneath the item list, so this guy, there's your name. Just clicking on the name field in this form will allow you to interactively change the name of that item as well. Okay? Pretty cool, huh? Pretty easy. Pretty easy. Get used to working with the item list. It is your best friend. Let me add in some content real fast to my sphere. There we go. There is in my sphere. Oh, wow. It's way over there. Okay, hold on a sec. I want to take my widget, and I want to center it at my origin. There we go. That way we're all around the same spot. Okay, so now I got my sphere and I got my widget, okay? 2 different mesh items within my scene. What if I wanted 2 widgets? I can duplicate mesh items, absolutely. Now there's a number of ways that we can duplicate the entire mesh item itself. The easiest way is to, again, utilize that right-click contextual menu over in the item list. Check it out. So if we go over here, we can right-click on it, and then kind of towards the bottom, duplicate. And please choose the first duplicate, okay? Get into the habit of choosing the first duplicate. This one down here at the bottom is going to do something a little bit different in certain situations, so please use this one, okay? Once you do so, check it out. We're going to get a copy. Boom. Now we have widget and then widget 2. What we've done in this is that we've completely cloned 100% of the content on that item. So now we have 2 widgets, okay? However, if you look in my OpenGL viewport, do we have 2 widgets? Looks like it's just one. What's happened? They're right on top of each other. So when you duplicate them, they're going to share the exact same space initially. Okay? Now I want to make sure that I'm moving the item, the folder, okay? So I'm going to go into item mode, top of the screen, keyboard shortcut number 5 on the top row of your keyboard, and that will allow me to go in and move my little guy. There we go. Now I have 2 widgets. Okay? Pretty cool, huh? Pretty cool. I like that. I got 2. We can move our items around our scene at any point that we want. Okay? But remember, when we're working with items, we're working at like kind of a folder level. So we don't have to individually select the polygons on that item. We can only select everything. Let me show you what that means in practice here. I'm actually going to delete one of my widgets. I'll delete the duplicate here. And I'm going to go back. Here's the delete key. Okay. Oops. There we go. All right, I'm going to go back into my widget here, and I'm in component mode. I've got my polygons selected, and let's do this. I'm going to add another shape into the mix. I'm going to hold down the control key and add a cone to that mesh item. Okay? So check it out. Now I have a cone and my widget all on the same widget mesh item. These are called discontiguous polygons, right? They're separate shapes. We can have as many separate shapes on one item as we want. Okay? When I move the item, okay, well, I can control each one of the component pieces individually from each other. Right now I have my red and blue widget selected, so if I was to activate the move tool, check it out. I can move it around. I can also go over and grab my little cone. I can move it around, okay? What's going to happen, however, when I work at the item level? What am I going to control if I worked at the item level? Yeah, I'm going to control both. I'm going to control both the cone and my red and blue widget together, okay? So here's the item selection set. And notice that the moment I go into my item selection set, the wireframe color for both of those pieces automatically gets selected. At this level in our hierarchy, at the topmost level in our hierarchy, we're manipulating and influencing everything on our scene, or excuse me, everything within that item, okay? Note that my sphere is staying in its current location because it's on a separate item. And now I can move those guys around. Okay. When I'm working in item mode, can I ever go in and select a polygon? No. Okay. When you're in item mode, you're always going to select and work with everything. If I wanted to go back in and change the height of that top polygon on my little widget there, what would I need to do first? Yeah, I got to switch into polygon mode, okay? And then I can go in and influence. You go in and influence that one, okay? Switch to polygon mode, and I'm on my way. Pretty neat, huh? Okay. Items can be extended. The role of an item can change based on what we're going to do. Earlier, we duplicated our item, right? You're going to be duplicating some items for your homework this week, okay? Think about it. You're going to need to make a whole bunch of thumbtacks for your corkboard, right? Are you going to individually model each one of those thumbtacks? No, that would be madness, right? That would be absolute madness. You model one, and then you duplicate it, okay? Yes, sir. Yeah, so we're going to go back to the same menu. We're going to duplicate it again. Okay. Now I showed you that you can right-click on something and duplicate the item, but there's another way that we can duplicate it. Okay, because all we get when we duplicate from this menu, so I can go duplicate right there. All we get is a copy of it, and it's in the exact same location as its original. Okay, that's neat. I can just in item mode, can grab it, hit the move tool. And I can move that guy wherever I want it to go. Okay? Rock and roll. Mission accomplished. However, I think we're cooler than that. We're much cooler than that. All right? We got the moves like Jagger. Okay? We're not going to be just duplicating things through the right-click menu. We want to use some powerful tools that will allow us to control exactly how these items are going to be duplicated in the scene. Okay? Thus enter the duplication tab. Okay? And I think it's probably more easily to illustrate this if I work just with the sphere. Okay, so there's my sphere. I've deleted my widget. Ta-da! Okay. Now please note I'm in item mode. Okay? And over here in our toolbar, check it out. Below the basic tool tab, we have this really groovy duplicate tab. Check it out. Duplicate. We have a number of tools in here that will allow us to interactively change where our duplicate items will be placed within inside of our 3D scene. There's a lot of them. We're not going to go over all of them, but I do want to show you a couple. I want to show you cloning, okay? And cloning are these guys down here. We're just going to look at this tool right there, the clone tool. The clone tool is going to allow us to make duplicate copies of this item in a straight line, okay? It's an incredibly powerful tool. Let me show you how it works. I'm in item mode, and that is the important thing here. I'm in item mode, so our clone tool has changed to blue. Okay, like the color of our little box, right? The color of our mesh item indicator in the item list. That's what we're seeing here. Okay. hopefully this won't confuse you any at all, but you can also clone polygons. So you don't necessarily have to clone items. You can clone just polygons. The same thing works, okay? But we're going to clone our item because I like working with items, okay? So I got item mode selected. I'm in item mode. I got my sphere selected, okay? I know it's selected because the wireframe color of that item is orange. And now I'm going to turn on the clone tool and zoom out. Much like the bevel tool, the clone tool isn't applied to your scene until you do what? Clicky. Yeah, we got to click in the viewport to apply the tool, and we're off to the races. So, check it out. I'm going to click, and what's the first thing I get? Tool handles, those arrows. What do those arrows kind of almost inspire you to do? Click on them, okay? Whenever you see a tool handle, click on them. You good? Okay. Roberto, yeah.
Mine's like off. My arrows are like not even on the globe.
Your arrows are not even on your globe. Now, this may be because of a couple other things, but no, let's not. Yeah, that's okay. Leave them over there for the time being. Okay, that's fine. We'll explore why that's happening a little bit later. So go ahead and start moving your arrows around, and you're going to find that based on the parameters. Check it out. Now I have 5 spheres. Fancy, I know, right? Fancy. Fancy, fancy, fancy. 5 spheres. Woo! Okay. And they've been modeled, or they've been duplicated in a straight line. Okay. Now, please note that my tool is still active. It's on. So any changes that we make to our options over here are going to be immediately reflected into my scene. Most important, the one that I want to kind of draw focus to is the number of clones that are going to be generated. So that first option in your clone tool, that one right there. What if I only wanted, I don't know, 3 of them? 3, and then the moment you hit the return key, check out what happens. Now I have 3 clones instead of 5. What if I wanted 20 of them? Boom. Okay. Pretty neat, huh? Now, I also have, you might be getting a slightly different result on your machine. I have this one turned on, between. And what's going on here is that if you look, this is very similar to the way Photoshop works, okay? What we're doing is that we're taking the original item, okay? We're taking the original, and we're cloning 20 copies. So here's the original item. We're cloning 20 copies in a straight line to that point, okay? To that point right there. So it's trying to pack 20 different clones between the first one and the last one, okay? If we don't want that to be the case, we can turn between off. Check it out. I'm going to put this back to 2. There we go. And I'll move my handle like right around in here-ish, okay? If I turn between off, now, watch what happens, okay? We can still adjust the distance between all the clones, but let's say I wanted more than 3 spheres. What if I wanted like 10 spheres? Well, we can just keep adding them onto the mix, and the distance between all of those spheres is going to be the same, okay? Allows us to kind of, in my mind, modeling in Modo is kind of like jazz, okay? You can do a lot of this off the cuff. If you're watching your scenes and watching your tool options, there's a lot of improvisation that's kind of, implicit within these tools. It's kind of cool. All right. Now the clone tools are much cooler than what you think. Okay. Maybe. So we can determine how many clones we're going to have. But check it out. We also get the ability here to change some parameters within each clone. So maybe I want each clone to be a little bit smaller than the one that's next to. Well, check it out. If I change the scale value to 50%, each clone is now going to be 50% smaller than the one immediately before it. Okay? So you get a tremendous amount of control as to how we're going to be working with all these duplicates when we start using these very powerful duplication tools. Okay? Explore these. Mess around with them. You can't break Modo. The worst thing you do is that it crashes. Okay? And if you get a weird result, just drop the tool, hit undo, problem solved. Okay? If you keep exploring these duplication tools, you can find pretty quickly that there's some really exciting duplication tools inside the mix here. Okay? Of course, we have clone. Clone is going to allow you to make straight lines. But what if I want a circle? Radial, my mouse cursor's on it, sorry. Radial array will allow you to duplicate things in a circle. Okay? Array is going to allow you to duplicate things along all 3 dimensions. So we can make kind of like a cube of spheres. Let me show you what I'm talking about. If you look carefully at my item list for a moment, you can see that we were in fact duplicating items. Okay? And now we have a whole bunch of spheres, so I'm just going to shift-click the top and the bottom one. Oops. And then right-click, Pat, there we go, and choose Delete from my list. Get rid of all those duplicates. Do you really want to delete them? Yes. Okay. So here's what an array looks like. We'll do an array. Click. Okay, so there's a little 4x4 cube. These little action handles in here allow us to interactively change the parameters of our array. But if we increase the y value, we can make something that looks like this. Okay. Pretty cool, huh? Pretty cool. So maybe we want like 6 by 6 by 6. It's a lot of spheres. Oops. Oops, I may have broken it. There we go. Yeah. All right, there we go. So that's the array command. It allows us to generate copies of our objects along all 3 dimensions simultaneously. Incredibly powerful. Now, when we duplicate items, we're creating a separate duplicate item or a separate duplicate copy of the original. They're independent from each other. They're not connected in any fashion. So, meaning, let me get rid of all this. This is a lot. So let me just go back in time a couple steps here. There we go. Okay. So if I just did a simple duplication of my sphere and then just moved it out of the way. All right. So here I have that exact same sphere duplicated once. They're independent from each other. They're complete separate copies of one another. What I do to the second sphere is in no way going to be influenced or is going to influence the first sphere. Okay? So they're independent. True duplicate copies are independent. Okay? We can do better than this, though. We have special item types inside of Modo called instances, which are incredibly powerful. I just want to talk about the role of an instance. You guys are going to dig this. This is pretty fun. Okay? Let's put this into production a little bit. This week, okay, you're going to be making some thumbtacks. You're going to potentially have 10 or 12 thumbtacks. What if you start working on your thumbtacks and you quickly discover that you really don't like the way it looks? Okay, you want to make a change to it. You want to make this change, or potentially you're going to make this change after the model's done, right? After you see it. Oftentimes that's what happens, okay? You make something, you take a step back, you look at it, and you kind of give it a thumbs up, thumbs down decision, okay? If you like it, you move on. Sometimes you don't like it, you'll have to rebuild it, okay? But what if you've already duplicated that object a number of times and you want to make a change to the mesh, right? You want to make a change to the original geometry. What are you forced to do? Think back to my spheres here. I had 40 different spheres in my scene a moment ago. Yeah, I'll have to go back to the original and change every single duplicate, or completely delete all the duplicates, change the original, and then reduplicate them again, right? Not fun. Thus enter the role of instances. Instances are a special type of item. You're going to like working with an instance. I'm a big fan of instances, because instances allow us to take the contents of that mesh item, copy and duplicate it like we were before, but the geometry on that instance is always going to reference back to the original. So any change we make to the original will be instantly adopted to all of its children, to all of its instances. Let me show you what that looks like. It's really easy to create an instance. I'm going to delete sphere 2 here. Delete, bye-bye. Okay, here's my little sphere. Okay, and check it out. If I right-click on sphere, inside that exact same right-click contextual menu where we were choosing duplicate before, we have instance. Let's instance this bad boy. Oh. I just hit duplicate hierarchy. I apologize. Let's do that again. Butterfingers. Right-click. Instance. There we go. All right. Now, it looks like on the surface that nothing really important has changed. Okay. However, if we examine our item list, we now have a blue mesh item cube and a pink mesh item cube. The pink mesh item cube represents an instance. We still can move, rotate, and scale it using our standard transform tools, but let's check out what happens when we start messing around with the original. I'm going to select my instance just temporarily here and move it out of the way. It's in the exact same orientation as the original. There we go. Here we go. So I got a pink one. That's my instance. And then I got my original back over here. So remember, with an instance, the geometry of the instance is always going to be referencing back to the original, meaning whatever you change on the original will be adopted by the instance. Check it out. What if I want to go and make a change to my geometry? I can go into the original, click on it in the item list, can go into polygon mode. Maybe I select all of these guys, and I bevel them up. And you can see that that change is reflected immediately on the instance. Okay? It's pretty cool. Okay. I did this on, I work with instances quite frequently. They're really a neat, powerful system inside of our Modo architecture. For example, let me put this out into the real world, a little production example here. I was doing an architectural visualization the other day where I was asked to make a staircase, an interior staircase, and all of our building codes require us to have little rails going down the staircase, right? Below the handrail. You have to have them. And they have to be a very specific size, a very specific distance between each handrail. It's kind of something that's important, right? Well, my client didn't know what the design of those handrails were going to look like, but I still needed to get my job done, right? So instead of just making a whole bunch of independent copies, I made one, and then I instanced them going down the handrail. When the client gave me the profile for the handrail, instead of changing about 200 separate pieces, I changed one. They all updated at the same time. Pretty cool. Yeah, it's really cool. In an instance, the geometry, and just the geometry, is referencing back to the original model. Okay? We still can move, rotate, and scale it independently from the original, but the geometry is the one thing that will always be the same. So if I was to go into my instance and move, rotate, and scale it, it still is an independent object. I can move, I can rotate it in an odd way, I can make it bigger or smaller. Okay? But the geometry is always going to be referenced from the original. Okay? Any change that I make in here happens on the instance. Okay? You can't. You can't change the instance. Okay? So you can't go into the instance in polygon mode. See, I'm in polygon mode right now, and it's not even letting me select the instance polygons.
So let's say we're duplicating the text or whatever. So we're duplicating the actual main item. Right?
Yeah, you got it.
That would still be the affect the instance.
Well, you have the original. Okay, so you're gonna have one item in your scene that's gonna be a thumbtack, and then you're going to instance the rest. Or you can instance all the copies of that thumbtack around the scene.
Just drop them in the big box?
We're not dropping anything. Remember, to create an instance, we right-click on the original. Okay? Right-click on the original. Instance. Okay? And then when you click on that instance, a new one pops in. And then you can just grab it with the move tool and move it where you, oops. What is going on? Oh, I'm not in item mode, that's why. Ha. Let me grab that instance. There it is.
So we got to do 20 thumbtacks, and we do that 20 times.
You can, but there is a way to do multiples. Perfect segue into my next question. You can't create an instance of an instance, yeah. It's just going to duplicate that instance, yeah. That's like a dream inside of a dream. We're getting like Inception now, okay? Yeah. Inception, I love it. Inception. Okay, so what if you want to make 20 instances in a line, okay? This is a workflow killer, having to right-click on it, instance, move it. Do you think our clone tools can generate instances for us, like we were cloning earlier? Yes, absolutely. Check it out. I'm going to delete just my 2 instances here real fast, just to clean up my scene. Right-click on the delete. Are you sure? Yes. Are you really, really sure? Yes to all. Now we're back. Okay. Check it out. If I'm in item mode and I hold down the Option key, my duplication tools change color. See how they go from blue? Hold down the Option key, they go to pink, right? Pink is the universal color for instances. So we absolutely can do an instance clone. So I can left click. I can use the same clone tools that I had before, and I'm on my way. Maybe I want them to rotate along the x-axis 45 degrees. Yeah, so you hold down the Option key. Hold down the Option key, and your duplication tools are going to toggle from item level to instance level. Okay? Questions on that? All right. One final thing, then we'll take a little bit of a break. Okay? I'm going to delete all these. And I'm going to delete what used to be my sphere. Looks like a funky abstract shape now. And generate a new mesh item. In our homework this week, you're going to be charged to make some posters. Actually, 5 posters that are going to go on your corkboard. Okay? What basic simple shape is your poster? It's a square. So what tool are we going to use? The square tool, yeah, the square tool, okay? So let's take a look at how we can use that square tool during the application phase of our little posters, okay? So here's the square tool, okay? And I'm just simply going to left click and drag to generate a square. Now, immediately, I can see some issues that are popping up. We've been working in item mode for the last little bit here, and you know, I'm a big believer of never, ever, ever being in item mode when you're constructing geometry, when you're creating it. So I'm going to change it over to polygon mode. The tools work better, believe it or not, if they're in a component mode. And I'm just going to delete it, start over. So I'm in polygon mode. That was my bad. And then I'll redraw my little cube. Okay. So there's my cube. Is there a way for us to interactively change the shape of our cube upon creation? How do we do it? It's easy, right? Just click on the little blue handles around the border of the shape, right? Allow us to change this little cube's dimensions. All right, rock and roll, pretty easy. Whee! Kind of fun, okay? However, I want to be able to do some really cool work with my poster, okay? I want to be able to deform my poster so it looks like it's kind of bending away from the wall, right? Because if you think about it, if you were to hang a poster with 2 thumbtacks and press them into your corkboard, the corners that don't have thumbtacks are going to curl away from the wall, right? Well, I want to have that little detail on my model. As 3D modelers, you have to begin to be very, very observant in your scene or of your surroundings, okay? These little details are going to make your scene feel more realistic to your audience. So if I wanted a bend to happen, I need to add some geometry into the mix here. Now, initially, when we're working with the cube tool, this is what we get. We just get a single polygon, right? A single cube. But what if I wanted like a 10 by 10 cube? What if I wanted to have this polygon be precisely this shape, but have 10 edges, or excuse me, 10 rows, both horizontally and vertically across the surface? Remember back to when we were talking about our cylinder earlier, we were able to change the tool options to determine how many sides were on our cylinder, right? We get the exact same thing with the cube. Check it out. Where I'm going is segments. Segments. Check this out. Segments within our interface, zoom in real fast, are going to allow us to interactively add more resolution across the surface of our mesh. So if I wanted to have 10 edge segments along the x-axis, I do that. And maybe I want 10 along the y. I'm hitting return there. And oops, let's do 10 along the z. And you can see what's happening. There it is. And now we have a 10 by 10 polygon. Okay? And we're doing this initially upon creation, rock and roll. This is kind of nice. This saves us a couple steps later on. So keep your eye on the options that you get over here. Okay? Just changing the segments. If your tool is still live, you can change it interactively. Okay? All right. Questions? Everyone good? Yeah, Liam, what's up?
How do I get it to look like what you because I don't do
Are you working with the cube tool? Yeah. And I'll zoom in. You can find the tool, or you can find these parameters in your tool options. They're right there. What we're focusing on, those guys. Okay?
By 10 by 10.
Yes, you got it. There you go. Now hit return for me. Ah, okay. Now I can see what you haven't drawn your cube yet, right? Left click and drag. There it is. There it is. There's your cube. Okay? Good job. All right. So now that we have a cube that has a higher resolution, we now can start to model with it and use some additional tools to give us some pretty cool results. Okay? Spacebar to drop the tool. As 3D modelers, we are charged with thinking 3 or 4 steps ahead of the game. We almost have to be kind of like master chess players. Do any of you guys play chess? I love chess. The ultimate strategic game, right? And good chess players are thinking many, many steps ahead of their competitors. That way, they can ensure that their pieces are in the right locations on the board to do whatever it is that they're trying to do. Okay? We kind of have to do the same thing. We have to think 4 or 5 steps ahead to ensure that what we do now is going to give us the ability to do what we need to do later. Okay? This is one of those steps. I want to be able to get that bend in my poster, right? So by initially generating my geometry with a lot of edge segments, I'm ready to go. Okay? I don't have to come back in and edit this later. I've already kind of pre-baked my poster for that deformation and that bending action. Okay? Thinking 3 or 4 steps ahead of the game. In addition, we also have to start considering the most simple application of the tools. Okay? We have to think about how difficult it's going to be to model a certain shape, to model a certain idea. Okay? Do any of you guys know what a Corinthian column is? Roman architecture. You probably have seen them. Yeah, you've seen them if you look at classic architecture. They're the big columns that you see, kind of everywhere, right? Well, at the top of some Corinthian columns, there are these very ornately carved leaves, right? And the tops of Corinthian columns kind of look something like this, right? So this is the profiles. They got a line here, and then they kind of go down. They go down. And they go down again, and then they shoot down like that. Okay? Pretend that's a straight line. Okay? You'd be a very bad sculptor if you actually created Corinthian columns with these big waves in them. You would not be the person that's going to build, famous buildings. It does, absolutely. So at the top of these Corinthian columns, in many cases, there are these really ornately carved leaves that are done in a marble, right? Well, I made a Corinthian column 4 or 5 years ago, and I was like, how in the world am I going to make the leaves? Because they needed to be nestled up at the top where you had that stair-step pattern, right? Well, I mean, that's a weird angle. The leaves are going to have a curve to them. Modeling a leaf that's curved is going to be hard, right? That's just tough. That's really tough. So the the most simple application of the tools and the technique would be to model the leaf flat and then to bend it into that final shape, right? Modeling a leaf that's perfectly flat and planar is easy. It's simple. I can do that in about 5 minutes. And then I can use the deformation tools to bend it into that final location, okay? The bend tool is really, really useful inside of our Modo system. And the bend tool this week is going to allow us to make the curve, kind of, have our little paper curve away. That's awesome, by the way. Let me show you what I'm talking about. It's really, 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 really easy, but it's kind of, there is a little bit of a landmine that people step on. So here's my little piece of paper. I'm going to double click on it to select the entirety of that shape in my polygonal selection set. If I go over to my deformation tool or my deform tab, it's the second one from the top. Okay. Here's basic, there's deform. And then down here is the bend tool. I love the bend tool. I use the bend tool all the time, and I think it's a great tool for you guys to begin to work with, okay? And you're going to use it this week for your posters as they curve away from the wall, okay? The bend tool is going to allow us to, well, to bend things. That's its sole focus. It's just going to bend things. That's a very simple focus in our, it's just to bend things. That's it. But I want you to look at how the application is going to draw the interface for this tool. I'm going to click on the tool to activate it. And then, as most things in Modo, I don't apply it to my scene until I do what? I click, right? I'm going to click at the top of my piece of paper, and you can see that Modo is drawing a couple different things. We get this kind of cool blue circle that's showing up precisely where I clicked. Now, there are 3 things within this widget, within this tool, that we need to know about. The little circle is kind of like a steering wheel. You click and drag on the circle, your object's going to bend, okay? In the center of the circle, we have a little small, very, very small, light blue cross. And I'll zoom in so you guys can see what it looks like. All right, there's the light blue cross. That light blue cross represents the start of our bend, okay? If you go from the center of our blue circle vertically along that purple line, we see a blue cube. Does anyone have a guess what huh? That's a really good question. So Yusra's question was, why doesn't it have an axis like move and rotate? We're going to hit that in a minute. Let me talk about that blue cube, and we'll come back to that, okay? So we have the start of our bend, which is that little blue cross in the center of the blue circle. And then the blue cube is the end of our bend. We can change both of these at any time.
I think kind of answer it because you're not trying to make it perfect. Since it's in deform, you're trying to make it kind of imperfect in a way.
A little bit. I like where you're going with that, Melanie. Now I don't want the end. I don't want my piece of paper to bend up here. I want the end of my bend to be down here, right? Now check it out. With it like this, remember, this is where it's going to end its bending operation, and the center is where it's going to begin. So if I was to left click and drag on my blue circle, this is what we get. Okay? Dun 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 dun. Hey. Okay? Now, I don't know about you guys, but this isn't necessarily bending the way I want it to bend. I don't want it to bend left and right. I want to have it bend kind of perpendicular to this, so it bends away from the wall. And this is why we don't have those X, Y, and Z indicators on the tool handle. Okay? When we're using the bend tool, we need to look very carefully at the orientation of that blue circle in relationship to the piece of paper. Okay? Right now, I would call the blue circle parallel to the piece of paper, right? They look like they're sharing the same plane. They're rotated, to each other. I don't want that, okay? I want my blue circle to be perpendicular because the orientation of that blue circle is going to determine the direction of the bend. Let me hit undo. And I'm actually going to drop the tool. Spacebar to drop the tool. And I'm going to orbit around a little bit so I'm kind of seeing the profile of my little piece of paper. And I'm going to apply the bend tool once more. Same thing, click at the top. Now, if we look at what's happening, check it out. That little blue circle is now perpendicular to the plane of my piece of paper, right? And watch what happens to my bend. I'm getting the result I want. We don't get an XYZ indicator because we want the user to control where that little blue circle is going to be, okay? In actuality, there is an XYZ indicator. It's just kind of buried over here inside of your tool options, okay? This is going to become a more powerful tool as we learn some more advanced features inside the Moto tool set. So point being, you have to look at your piece of paper and you have to look to see which orientation that blue circle is currently residing on or in your scene, okay? Kellen, question?
For some reason, that on mine, it's not bending, like it's not curving it, it's just moving the entire paper.
Yeah, okay. So Kellen's run into a problem that you may run into. And let me just kind of illustrate what Kellen's problem is. Okay. Kellen, this is what you have created on your scene. You have a cube, but you don't have enough segments. You just have a single polygon like that. Okay? Single polygon, 100 polygons. Okay? On this one, if I was to apply the bend tool over here, so deform, bend, click at the top, there's nothing to bend. Okay? It's just a single piece of paper, just rotating like a door. Okay? So we got to make sure we have enough geometry on our paper to allow us to control the resolution, if you will, the amount of it being bent. Now, Kellen, if you're in the situation where you only have one polygon and you need more, as I'm sure others are also experiencing, here's a great keyboard shortcut to help out. We're going to interactively subdivide this polygon. So basically what we're going to do is turn our single polygon into 4. It's automatically going to slice it for us. If we were to hold down the Shift D, Shift plus the D key, okay? Shift D, check it out. Shift D, you're going to get this little pop over. Just make sure it says faceted and then hit OK. And you can see now we have 4. Let's turn one polygon into 4. If we were to do it again, what do you think is going to happen? How many polygons are we going to end up with? 16, okay? Sorry, second? Yeah, so we are adding segments in here. So this is a way to add segments if you didn't initially create your cube with those segments on there. Okay?
So Shift D and
Shift D. And the only thing that you got to make sure when you do this is just make sure it says faceted under the subdivision surface method. It should be the default. 99% of the time, that's what's going to show up. But every once in a while, I get someone saying, it's not working, it's turned into a circle, and it's because they're using another method here. Okay? Just make sure it says faceted and we're on our way. Boom. Now I have basically an 8x8 cube. Okay? And now if I was to just double click on them, apply the bend tool, I can bend away. Okay? Check this out. This is another cool thing that another reason why I'm just in love with the Moto modeling tools. Okay? If the tool is still on, it's live, meaning anything that we change within the tool handles will immediately be seen in the OpenGL viewport, which is pretty cool. I showed you earlier that we have the start and end indicators for our bend, right? Well, check this action out. What if I change where my bend is starting while my tool is still on? Look at this. I'm going to grab that little light blue cross in the center, and now I'm only bending the bottom portion of my page. Okay, pretty cool. The top part of my paper is staying where it is. You can even mess around with the end here a little bit. Let's put my bend back to a value of 0. And then I'm just going to put my end indicator at the bottom. There we go. Ta-da! Pretty cool, huh? Yeah, I love it. Now, one thing you don't want to do is cross the streams here. Okay, if your end is close to the beginning, you're going to get some awesome, cool results. But it's, yeah, that's not good. Yeah. That's awesome. It's totally going to flip around the orientation of the bend. Pretty cool, huh? So that's one of those moments where, don't cross the streams. Do you guys know that pop culture reference? My favorite movie, Ghostbusters, right? End of the movie, right? Stay Puft Marshmallow Man coming down, Madison Avenue in New York City. Venkman turns to Egon and says, or Egon says, cross the streams. And Venkman says, whoa, 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 I thought you said don't cross the streams. Do you know why you're not supposed to cross the streams according to Dr. Venkman, or from Egon? Not initially. That wasn't immediately after. He said because it would be bad. It would be bad. That's why you don't cross the streams. And then they say because it would create a cataclysmic explosion that will completely rip a hole in the space-time continuum, and then all life as we know it would be reduced down to nothing. So what do they do at the end of the movie? They cross the streams, right? Because they were told not to do that at the beginning of the movie. So I love Ghostbusters. I wish they would make another Ghostbusters. I mean, come on, Dan Aykroyd, and Bill Murray. Come on.
They actually used the script they had for a third movie to make it an Xbox game.
Yeah, not the same. Not the same. I love Bill Murray. Does anyone else love Bill Murray as much as I do? I love Bill Murray. He's so cool, man. He's getting cooler with age, too, man. I love it. Did you guys know that Bill Murray owns a minor league baseball team? Yeah. How awesome is this? So I saw a video of this. At this minor league baseball team, or a baseball game, they had a rain delay, as you often do in baseball, right? So during the rain delay, all the groundskeepers come out, and they put these big tarps over the infield so the dirt doesn't get wet, okay? And he did. And it was raining for a bit. Then all of a sudden, to entertain the crowd, here comes Bill Murray, the owner of this team, just booking it out of the outfield, right? And once he gets to the big plastic tarps, he just turns them into a gigantic slip and slide. He's just, I mean, come on. Bill Murray is the coolest guy ever, right? I saw another thing on YouTube that a fan bumped into Bill Murray at a conference somewhere, at a hotel or something. And this guy was a huge Bill Murray fan like I am. And the fan came up to Bill Murray and says, dude, you are my hero. I love everything that you do. I don't want an autograph. However, I want to have something that kind of proves that I met you. Will you do a slow motion walk-by video with me? And Bill Murray said, yeah, I'll do a slow motion walk-by video. And so here's a cut to this video of this dude, just some random guy, and Bill Murray walking around a corner and super slow-mo, all Reservoir Dogs and stuff, looking all badass and stuff. I mean, it was hilarious. Man, I want to do a slow motion walk-by video with Bill Murray. Man, that'd be awesome, right?
It's been done. You got to think of something better.
Yeah, that's true. Then I would just be copying. I would still love it.
You know the French fry story?
The French fry story, no.
He went to a Wendy's and ate some of these fries. It was nobody will believe you. They walked out.
Bill Murray just ate your French fries. That's awesome. I love Bill Murray. So good. All right. I think my love affair with Bill Murray has come to an end. We probably should get back to our regularly assigned homework. Okay. So the bend tool. The bend tool is incredibly powerful. Kellen, yeah.
How do you bend just one more?
Great question. Great question. The bend tool kind of works on top of our entire Modo architecture. And we know from last week that all things begin and end with a selection, right? Whatever's selected inside of Modo is going to be edited. If nothing is selected, everything is edited, right? So if we wanted to localize the operation or the outcome of the bend tool along a very specific series of polygons, well, we just select those polygons, okay? So maybe I only want to bend the bottom two rows. I can fire off the bend tool. And now I'm only bending those two rows. Okay. Now, if you only wanted to bend one corner, I would select maybe just a portion of that corner, and then I would bend it from two different directions. Okay. So I'd bend it going horizontally, and then I'd bend it going vertically. Okay. So let me bend items. No, I think this is only something you can do on a polygonal level. To be honest with you, now I'm second guessing myself. Can you bend an item? I've never actually tried to bend an item. Let's give it a go. Like I said, the worst that you can do, you can bend an item. Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's going to affect everything on that item. That's great. This is how powerful Moto is, you know. I love it. Yeah. Oops. There we go. Now, I'm not necessarily getting the deformation that I want. It's not actually bending, it's more like a fancy rotate. Yeah, so I'd probably still do this at the polygonal level. All right. Questions on how to work with the bend tool? Now, I know that, yeah, Mr. Pryor.
Like, let's say I want to bend the bottom left-hand corner
Uh-huh.
of that paper.
Uh-huh.
Like, just the corner.
Yep.
So, like, when you got one $1 bill.
Uh-huh.
How do I create a new line and make it that corner?
So do you have just like a single polygon?
Yeah, like, a single polygon and then,
So if you have a single polygon, this is what I want you to do. Okay, like that, right, James? That's what you have?
oh no, I have multiple polygons. Just like those. But,
You just want to move those.
I want to move one corner, like, make a little triangle shape.
Yeah, so if you want to move just one, I wouldn't use the bend tool. Okay? If you want to move just one, I'd just probably fire off the rotate tool. But that looks kind of silly, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And then, like, you know, like dollar bill has a little crazy corner.
Why don't we turn that into a triangle? Pretty much. That's turn that corner and slice it to where we kind of pull into triangular.
Yeah. So if you wanted to turn it into a triangle, and this is kind of going off the reservation a little bit of what I was going to talk about today, but you could do it. If you select your geometry, or select your polygon, go to the top of the screen where it says geometry. There is a command in here called triangulize, and it's under the polygon menu. It's called triple. I apologize. There it is. Now, if it's not going the direction that you want it to go in, let's do this. Okay. Well, for me personally, why don't we just do this? Just move the vert that represents the corner. Just move it up. That's the path of least resistance. Yeah, that'll work. Okay. To help you guys out a little bit, because I know this is tough. In the resources section on renderography, I have an entire video talking about the role of the bend tool. I've also have an entire video talking about cloning and duplicating object, and then our conversation about the item list is at the top there. So the last 2 hours in those 4 minutes. Okay? Or 4 videos, excuse me. Questions? All right. Let's take a short little break. We'll come in and we'll start talking about our lab work, okay? Small break. Yes, sir. What's up?
Hey, so
Nice tie, by the way. I like it.
today was picture day.
Ah.
So this week we are like developing posters, whatever you call them.
Yeah, absolutely. Come here, Leon. Let me show you what we're going to be doing here specifically. Okay. Now we're jumping ahead a little bit, but we can always take a step back and look at what we're doing. Okay. So this is what we're going to be building. Okay. Okay. Now let's break down the simple shapes here.
All right. Posters.
Posters. What shape is a poster?
Square.
Square. So what tool are you going to use?
The square tool.
Square tool. What about the actual cork board itself?
We are going to be using the square tool as well.
Absolutely.
And we are also going to make the bulletin board shape by using the bevel tool.
Absolutely.
And
Perfect.
then making a pit in the center.
Perfect.
I guess by using the same tool.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. Spot on. Now, what about thumbtacks?
Well, I'm assuming we use the cylinder tool.
Yeah.
And
What else?
And then upon finishing our first thumbtack, we duplicate them.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Perfect. Now that's it. You got it. Just that easy.
Yeah,
Anything else?
thanks. No, that's what I need to know.
Great job today, Liam. Yes, ma'am. What's up?
So in terms of turning in our assignments,
Uh-huh.
because I didn't finish
The coffee cup?
yet because I was sick for a few days, so I took some time away.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, all right. Back from our break. So we have a little bit more business to do today. Good timing, Mr. Weaver. Okay, a little bit more business to do today. If you look at the lab assignment this week, it's a really, really fun lab assignment where we're going to be making a candlestick, okay? A candlestick. And specifically, here's a great example of one of the candlesticks. Specifically, the candlestick gives us an opportunity to practice with the bevel tool some more, okay? Because the bevel tool really is the most useful tool inside of the entire application. It gives us access to some really neat things. Now, making complex bevels can be a little bit of a chore at times, and I think the earlier example that we had, this one, there we go. Come on in, Yusra, good timing. We're literally just getting started. So if you look at your candlestick, the base of this candlestick is really intense. Is someone playing music? Or is that next door? It's next door. Okay, just want to double check. So look at the base of the candlestick. There's some really intricate bevels going on in there, and I don't want to spend my time, like shift clicking up, inset, shift click up, inset. That's a lot of clicking. We're working in front of these fantastic thinking machines. I want the machine to do it for me. Okay. So let me show you how to work with profiles, bevel profiles, and it'll allow you to kind of create some really neat effects using the bevel tool. It's really easy to apply and to use inside your scene, so let's look at it inside of 701. I'm going to start by just deleting all of my posters real fast. There we go. Okay, and I'm going to just very quickly not do that. There we go. Yeah, hold on a sec. My pen is driving me crazy. Okay, well, let's try this again here. Single left click. Hold down the control key. Left click and drag. There we go. That's what I was after. Just a two-dimensional disc. Okay. So this is what we don't want to do. We don't want to go in, hit the bevel tool, then go up and do maybe an inset, shift, click, up, inset, shift, click, up, shift, click. I mean, this is just a lot of work to do something relatively simple, right? And you're never going to get a result that's accurate. You're always going to be off ever so slightly, okay? Unless you're like writing down the values that you're beveling, okay? So no likey. I don't like that. Let me show you how to work with the profiles. The profiles are really cool. And again, it requires us to just work with the bevel tool. However, check this action out. I want to shift click and apply the bevel tool. But down here in our tool options, look at this. We have some additional awesomeness hanging out in this word that says profiles. Okay, profiles. Now, when you open up your profiles, open up that little channel there, you're going to get a little browser of images. Okay, can everyone are these profiles installed in your machine?
Yeah, you have to open it up. You have to open up the other thing again.
Open up the other thing. What do you mean?
When you hit profiles, there's a profile that opens on the bottom that says none, then you click in none, and then
Yeah, I see what you mean. So what you're seeing, your browser toolbar here isn't giving you, it's just showing, so if you click on browser toolbar and then you click on profiles, right? Yeah, okay. So that's an odd distinction, but it is what it is for your installations, okay? So if you don't see any profiles down in here, click on, this is a navigation kind of area that will allow you to navigate to the different levels within the library. These are all vector files that have come from Adobe Illustrator. So if you don't see anything, click Profiles, and then if it says None, click here, and you should get this little list. I have a whole bunch of them here. I have like router bits and stuff. What these allow us to do is to choose a profile and have it immediately apply to our scene. Okay? It's interactive while the tool is running, and let me just kind of remind people how to apply it. Now, I already have the bevel tool on, and I've applied an offset, okay? So if I go choose a profile, by left clicking on them, you can see that profile is immediately applied to that operation. It's still live, so I can increase and decrease the scale of my little guy here. Pretty cool. If I don't like that one, I can change it interactively just by choosing a different profile from the list. And we're on our way. Okay? Some of these are pretty neat. So the question is, can you create your own profile? Absolutely. Absolutely. If you know a little bit more about how to work with Illustrator, yes. These are all just Illustrator files. Illustrator files with a single path on a single layer that we import. Yeah, it's very, very cool. Very, very cool. We're going to be messing around with the profile system a lot this semester because it allows us to create some detail quickly. Okay? I mean, try beveling that by hand. You're just not going to. Okay? You're not going to bevel that shape by hand. You can continue stacking these on top of each other. So if I was to perform a shift click again, check it out. The next offset that I do is also going to use that same profile. But since the library is live, I can change the way it looks on the fly. Shift click. I can do another one. Or maybe I'll go grab the classical bead. I mean, try modeling that. You're not going to model that by hand. These profiles allow you to do it quickly and instantly. So that's how you turn them on. How do you turn them off? And this is kind of one of those things that people miss this. And I would agree that it's a fault of Luxology. They don't make it really obvious on how to deactivate a profile. But once you kind of see it in action, you go, oh, okay, I got it. To turn off a profile, you basically need to click in the empty area of the preset browser. Okay? See how when I click on one, it applies the profile to the operation. And then when I click in between the profile icons here, so in the empty part of the preset browser, it turns it off. Okay? And now our Bevel tool is back to behaving like we had before. Okay? Where we'll be able to just do simple shifts in insets. At any time, we can activate those profiles and create a very, very cool result. I just turned it off now. I'll shift click, and then I'll do, oh, I don't know. How about the French one? Awesome, huh? So your job this week is to use the profile system in conjunction with the Bevel tool to create a candlestick. Let's visit renderography real fast and ensure that everyone understands the expectations for this assignment. Okay? So you're going to be making a candlestick. You have to make a candlestick, and you have to make a candle, okay? Because it wouldn't be a candlestick without a candle on it, okay? So you got to make two different things. You also have to create the geometry for a simple scene, okay? And I mean simple scene. If you look at the examples that I've given you down below, I mean it could just be a plane. Okay, your candlestick needs to sit on top of something. I don't care what, but we have to make sure that it's sitting on top of something. It provides context to the size and scale of our shape. Simple materials for all the elements in the scene. So remember, select some polygons, hit the M key to colorize those polygons. And then I would like you to produce a render that's at 720 by 480, which are the defaults, so there's nothing really to change there. Okay? At the conclusion of your lab assignment, you're going to be uploading both the Luxology project file, so make sure you save your work, and the render to the Dropbox on D2L. I want to show you one thing in D2L real fast that is a little bit different from your homework. Most of you were able to successfully do this, and I got to apologize. I can't. I'm not going to share this with you guys. Oops. Okay. So if you go into the Dropbox on D2L, check it out. Okay. So here's your coffee cup. Here's the corkboard geo project that you're going to be doing this week for homework. Okay. And then as a reminder, down here at the bottom, there's the candlestick. So the lab assignments have been visually separated from the homework assignments in the Dropbox on D2L. I just want to make sure everyone knew that. Okay? Candlestick is down here at the bottom. Okay? Questions? Yeah?
If you want to color just one part of an object, I noticed that when I'm selecting it, it does the entire mesh anyway. So is there a way to separate?
Yeah. So Kellen's question was, in Modo, I'm trying to colorize just maybe those guys in here, okay? However, when she's applying it, did you have a selection first? Yeah. If you leave this name value to default, okay? If this is default, it's going to do, initially it's going to do that, okay? But if I was to go do all of these and leave it as default but change it to like green, see how they all went to green? Okay? Just you got to give it a separate name. You got to give it a separate name. If everything's named default, everything's going to have that same color. You got to separate the colors out from one another. Okay? More on this next week. I don't want you to spend too much time and I don't want you to lose too much sleep over things not shading correctly.
What about what's presets?
Presets. If you would like to use a preset, I'll let you explore that on your own. Okay? If you go to Motopedia under the materials section, there's an entire video about the preset library. We'll be talking about that next week. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves too much. Next week, and I'm serious. Next week we're talking about lighting and material next week. Okay, we're not going to touch any of the modeling tools. It's all going to be applying materials, applying presets, and understanding lights. Okay, so next week is going to be the big shader tree day. Okay? Questions? Other questions? Yes, sir.
We're learning the textures next week then, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Textures come next week. Textures and materials come next week. Well, let me rephrase that. We're going to begin our conversation about textures and materials. We're going to lay the foundation. It's not every week following next week is going to include modeling, texturing, and rendering stuff. Okay? All right. We got about 20 minutes left in class. Let's use the remainder of class to knock out your lab work and to start your homework if you haven't already. And I'll walk around and answer questions, okay? Let's get to work.